A storm is gathering over the waterway that carries nearly one-third of the world's cargo. Why would the United States, the very nation that built the canal a century ago, now demand free passage, while Panama refuses and China walks away from its Belt and Road promises? The answers hide beneath the rush of water, the clang of metal gates, and a diplomatic clash that could reshape global trade. The first notes described the canal's historic role and the sudden shift toward power rivalry. Now, as Secretary of State Marco Rubio steps onto the banks of the 82-kilometer artery, the air smells of diesel and tropical humidity, while ships roar past like steel serpents. Rubio reminded President José R. Molino that the United States once pledged to pay for the canal's construction. He asked, how did that promise turn into a demand for free use, and why does Panama reject it while also pulling out of China's Belt and Road? The tension rises as America's foreign policy focus sharpens on economic and national security, sending a clear signal to allies. But what will Panama's next move reveal? In the last segment, we saw Panama's pivotal position. The canal moves about 6% of global maritime trade and handles 40% of U.S. container traffic, while over 13,000 vessels, roughly 5 to 6% of all ships, slice through its locks each year. Australia, though only a small user, feels the ripple of any disruption, because freight costs spiked in 2024 after drought-limited canal capacity and Red Sea conflict strained routes. The central bank warned that rising freight could soon push Australian goods prices higher. Meanwhile, China, now the canal's second-largest user at 21% of cargo volume, operates ports on both Atlantic and Pacific entrances, sparking U.S. fears of hidden influence. Rubio demanded an end to Communist Party control, while President Molino accused Washington of peddling intolerable lies about the waterway. As the United States threatens to reclaim control, the question lingers, will the canal become a pawn in a great power chess game, or will Panama stand firm and keep the waterway neutral? The answer may determine the future flow of world commerce. What if the gateway to global trade became the center of a fierce international showdown? The stakes at the Panama Canal have never been higher. As geopolitical tensions rise, Panama is caught in the whirlwind of a power struggle that could redefine maritime trade forever. With China's influence in question and America scrambling to reassert control, the world watches closely. So, what's the real story behind this critical waterway? In a recent monetary policy report, the central bank revealed that shipping costs surged dramatically in 2024. This spike was largely due to ongoing disruptions in the Red Sea and the Panama Canal's compromised capacity brought on by severe drought. Although prices for goods in Australia haven't yet spiked as a result, the potential for future inflation looms large. Experts highlight the vital role of the Panama Canal in connecting the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, saving time and decreasing shipping expenses dramatically. Imagine this, a vessel traveling at 20 knots takes merely 11 days to journey from San Francisco to New York using the canal. Without this shortcut, the same trip extends to an agonizing 27 days. In fact, each year, over 13,000 ships, accounting for about 6% of global trade, transit this crucial channel, with a staggering 40% of the United States container traffic relying on it. Why is this waterway so pivotal for Donald Trump and the U.S.? U.S. ships represent a giant portion of traffic, with a staggering 52% of transit activities originating or concluding in American ports. Trump has voiced his determination to reclaim control over this centuries-old thoroughfare, which he alleges has fallen under Chinese dominion. This canal was foolishly handed to Panama, he claimed, raising alarms over the potential threat. But does China truly hold sway over the Panama Canal? While the notion is highly disputed, recognizing the nuances of control is essential. Following Panama's assertion of ownership in 1999, the canal's administration came under the authority of the Panama Canal Authority, an autonomous governmental body. Nevertheless, China's presence has expanded significantly, positioning it as the second-largest user of the waterway. As Panama has strengthened ties with China, most notably withdrawing diplomatic support for Taiwan and embracing the Belt and Road Initiative, the stakes have risen. But in a shocking twist, President José Raúl Molino announced that Panama would not renew its agreement with Beijing for the initiative, sending ripples through the geopolitical landscape. Is Washington's anxiety over China's influence in Panama justified? Despite Trump's claims lacking concrete evidence, the fear of increased foreign control over essential maritime routes is not unfounded, particularly for nations like Australia, heavily reliant on these trade networks for economic stability. Panama's leaders have dismissed U.S. claims as intolerable lies, refusing to allow American vessels free passage through their canal, knitting a complex tapestry of tension between the three nations. As the narrative unfolds, will tensions escalate further? Will the Panama Canal remain a symbol of peace and neutrality or become the flashpoint of conflict? The international community waits, hovering on the brink of uncertainty. The world watches as each nation maneuvers for dominance, with the future of maritime trade hanging in the balance. What if the world's most vital waterway, once a marvel that literally cut continents in two, has become the newest battlefield for superpowers? Picture a silent tug-of-war where one side claims a foreign giant secretly runs the locks, while leaders trade accusations louder than a ship's horn echoing through a fog-filled dawn. Summary of the opening scene: we have just seen the Panama Canal's strategic importance highlighted, and the first hints of a geopolitical clash over its control. The United States sees the canal as a lifeline, carrying almost half of its container traffic. Trump's administration has repeatedly warned that the waterway is slipping into foreign hands. He argues that China, not the United States, now pulls the levers. This claim sparked a fierce diplomatic row. Secretary of State Marco Rubio met Panama's president, José Rio Molino, and pressed the point: the current arrangement violates a treaty that guarantees free, neutral passage for all nations. Rubio warned that without an immediate shift, Washington would be forced to defend its treaty rights, even if that meant using military options. Molino shot back, insisting the canal will stay firmly under Panama's control and denying any Chinese interference in Panamanian governance. He called the U.S. accusations baseless. Yet the data tells a complex story. Since the canal passed fully to Panama, the Panama Canal Authority has run it independently. Chinese investment, however, has grown. Between October 2023 and September 2024, Chinese-linked vessels moved 21.4% of the cargo that passed through, making China the second-largest user after the United States. A Hong Kong subsidiary of a major conglomerate has operated ports on both Atlantic and Pacific sides since 1997, though it does not control the waterway itself. Panama's diplomatic ties have also shifted. After breaking formal relations with Taiwan, the nation recognized Beijing in 2017 and joined the Belt and Road Initiative. This move, however, is being rolled back. Molino announced that Panama will not renew its participation, becoming the first Latin American country to pull out. The lingering question remains: does China truly command the canal, or are the fears merely a political echo chamber? The answer could reshape global shipping routes, impact freight costs, and alter the strategic calculations of nations far beyond the isthmus. Cliffhanger: if Washington decides that the canal cannot stay under foreign influence, what drastic step could it take next, and how might the world's trade arteries tremble under that decision? A startling fact: more than 1 in 5 tons of cargo that rolls through the Panama Canal each year is linked to a single Hong Kong conglomerate, its vessels threading the locks with the same precision as a sniper's breath, yet no nation can claim outright ownership of the waterway itself. Summary of the previous segment: we learned that the United States accuses China of covertly steering the canal, while Panama defends its sovereignty, and recent data shows significant Chinese usage of the route. Now the tension sharpens. Rubio told President Molino and Foreign Minister Javier Martinez that Trump sees the Chinese presence as a direct threat to the treaty guaranteeing perpetual neutrality. He declared the status quo unacceptable and warned that, without swift changes, the United States would act to protect its rights. Molino responded with steely resolve. He rejected the notion that any nation interferes with Panamanian governance and affirmed that the canal will remain in Panama's hands. He dismissed Trump's claim of a looming strong retaliation as nothing more than political theater. Despite the political sparring, the facts are concrete. When Panama assumed full control, the Panama Canal Authority, a civilian agency, took charge. Chinese involvement has been rising, however. From October 2023 to September 2024, Chinese carriers accounted for 21.4% of cargo volume, making China the canal's second-largest user. Hutcherson Holdings, a subsidiary of Hong Kong-based CK, has operated twin ports on both sides of the isthmus since 1997, though the canal itself remains outside its direct control. Panama's diplomatic dance with Beijing deepened after it severed ties with Taiwan and formally recognized China in 2017. The country later joined Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative, securing investment but also inviting scrutiny. This week, Molino announced Panama will not renew its Belt and Road Agreement, marking a historic withdrawal for Latin America. The broader picture shows why the canal matters beyond the Americas. Australian markets, for instance, feel the ripple when the canal's capacity shrinks. As freight costs climb and supply chain timing tightens. The canal shortens a San Francisco to New York voyage from 27 days around Cape Horn to just 11 days, a time saving that translates into billions of dollars annually. Cliffhanger: as Washington weighs its next move, could an unexpected alliance or a covert operation finally decide who truly holds the keys to the canal's massive steel gates? The world watches, waiting for the next turn of the lock. Did you know that a single waterway, stretching just 82 kilometers, could become the new battlefield where superpowers clash over trade, sovereignty, and secret intelligence? Imagine the roar of massive container ships, the salty mist curling around steel hulls, and a hidden tug-of-war that could reshape the world's economy tonight. We have just heard that Panama, the first Latin American nation to join China's Belt and Road Initiative, announced it will not renew the pact. The scheme, funded by Beijing, builds ports, railways, and bridges across distant shores, giving China a foothold in foreign markets. Yet President José Rio Molino rejected the renewal, sparking accusations that Washington's claims of a Chinese takeover are exaggerated. The scent of diesel lingers as cargo vessels line up, while Australia's own lesson, leasing Darwin's port to a Chinese-owned firm for 99 years in 2015, still echoes. Could this refusal signal a wider pushback against hidden influence? In the wake of Panama's decision, the United States leans on two-century-old treaties that demand the canal stay neutral and grant Washington the right to defend it with force if needed. Although Panama has owned the passage since 1999, mainland Chinese and Hong Kong firms now run key terminals at both Atlantic and Pacific entrances. Under China's national security law, those companies might be compelled to share intelligence or support military actions. The canal's metallic groan under passing ships masks a strategic chessboard where every bolt could be a spy's foothold. Will the coming months see a diplomatic showdown? Or will quiet negotiations keep the waterway's gates open for all? Previously we saw how Chinese port ownership gives Beijing a silent foothold at both ends of the canal, and how Secretary of State Marco Rubio begged Panama to cut the Communist Party's grip on the waterway. What if the keys to world commerce are turning in unseen steel locks? The Indian Ocean's bustling lanes, from Bangladesh to Sri Lanka and Pakistan, now echo with China's heavy footsteps. Its grip tightens over the Strait of Malacca, the Hormuz Gateway, every vital passage humming with cargo ships. Chinese cash flows into Pacific ports, even the remote Solomon Islands, building a lattice of docks, warehouses, and rail lines. Imagine the salty wind brushing the decks, the clang of cranes, the scent of diesel mingling with tropical rain. Under China's national security laws, some of these enterprises, state-linked or party-aligned, could be pressed into intelligence work or even military support if tensions flare. Could a single dock become a listening post, a launch pad, a bargaining chip? These investments could squeeze trade routes away from rivals like the United States and Australia. Yet, despite fiery promises, an outright seizure of the canal looks improbable. Still, the shadow of Chinese influence looms large over the Atlantic and Pacific entrances. How will Panama answer the United States' demand for free transit? President José Raúl Molino lashes back, calling Washington's claims intolerable lies. He refuses any pact that would let U.S. vessels glide through without tolls. The White House boasts that government ships now sail fee-free, but Molino's firm stance suggests a brewing showdown. Will Panama hold its ground, or will pressure force a new accord? In the wake of that standoff, the broader pattern of Chinese maritime dominance surfaces again. Port assets across the globe, especially those hugging the canal's gateways, grant Beijing strategic leverage far beyond any single waterway. Picture the rhythmic thrum of engines, the metallic taste of sea spray, the hushed murmurs of diplomats in dim conference rooms. If China's grip tightens, could Australia, a nation reliant on uninterrupted shipping, find its supply lines throttled? Could the very ports that welcome its cargo become covert outposts, ready to relay data or host naval assets? The question sharpens: should Australia act now, bolstering its own maritime defenses, or hope the tension fizzles? And what will Panama do when the world's eyes fix on its modest strait, waiting to see whether it will bend or break under the weight of superpower rivalry? The next move could reshape global trade forever. A colossal waterway, once the proud triumph of engineering, is now the stage for a high-stakes showdown. Why would a 82-kilometer channel that shuttles 6% of global trade become a pawn in a rivalry between superpowers? What secret deals, thunderous threats, and unexpected betrayals lie beneath its calm surface, and how might the fate of continents hinge on a single lock gate? In the previous segment, Panama rejected a U.S. demand to waive tolls for American government vessels, even after Washington announced a supposed agreement. The State Department later claimed its ships could now transit without fees, saving billions, while the Panama Canal Authority insisted it alone sets charges and would not alter them. Now the dispute has erupted into a full-blown diplomatic firestorm. For days after former President Trump resurrected his baseless claim that the United States foolishly handed the canal back to Panama in 1999 only to allow China to seize it, he warned of something very powerful if the status quo persisted. Secretary of State Marco Rubio told President José Rio Molino that Trump sees the Chinese Communist Party's growing sway over the canal zone as an intolerable threat. Rubio reminded Panama that a U.S. treaty obliges America to defend the canal should it be attacked, a duty the U.S. Navy must enforce. He added, "It is absurd to pay a fee for a passage we are sworn to protect in wartime." Most analysts doubt a military reconquest, recalling the 1989 invasion that ousted Manuel Nor. Yet Trump's rhetoric appears designed to pressure Panama and its neighbors, forcing them to slow China's economic advance in what the United States still calls its backyard. Under U.S. pressure, Panama announced it will withdraw from China's Belt and Road Initiative, ending its participation in the massive infrastructure scheme. Can this anti-China strategy reshape the balance of power, or will the canal's fate slip further into the shadows of global intrigue? As tensions rise in international waters, the Panama Canal finds itself at the epicenter of a fierce geopolitical struggle. Once a symbol of global cooperation, it now teeters on the brink of conflict between superpowers. What sparked this shift? Was it a mere misunderstanding, or is it the harbinger of a larger power play? Marco Rubio, the U.S. Secretary of State, recently visited Panama, touring the renowned canal that manages a staggering 40% of the world's cargo. Upon his arrival, Rubio faced questions that reverberated through the political landscape. Why has Panama rejected the idea of U.S. ships sailing free through its waters, and why is it distancing itself from China's Belt and Road Initiative? These inquiries hold the key to understanding a brewing storm. Donald Trump's foreign policy agenda has sharpened its focus on national security and economic resilience. In his eyes, the Panama Canal is not just a crucial maritime artery, it is a symbolic linchpin in the power dynamics of the Western Hemisphere. The canal, stretching 82 kilometers and vital for U.S. container traffic, has been pivotal since the early 20th century. But why does Trump feel so threatened? Is China's growing investment in the canal an affront to American interests? Rumors swirl about China's influence, with Trump sounding alarms over Beijing's control in the region. They violated the treaty, he claims. We'll take it back. Rubio echoed his sentiments at a tense meeting with Panamanian President José R. Molino, who boldly rejected U.S. demands, asserting that the canal is firmly in Panama's grasp. How did the U.S. transition from wanting control to merely pleading for access? Despite these claims of Chinese maneuvering, reality paints a different picture. China, while a major player, operates under the agreements set forth when Panama reclaimed the canal in 1999. The Panama Canal Authority governs operations, maintaining independence. Yet, investment from China stirs unease, particularly as Panama pivots its foreign relations. The situation intensifies as Panama withdraws from the Belt and Road Initiative, a colossal infrastructure undertaking aiming to bolster global trade. China's foreign ministry expressed regret, suggesting external pressure from the U.S. influenced Panama's decision. Were these actions tactical maneuvers or a desperate attempt to assert sovereignty? The answer to this lies in Panama's future alliances. Can Trump's anti-China strategy reshape the landscape, or will it backfire? With tariffs looming against Canadian, Mexican, and Chinese imports, how will Panama navigate this treacherous terrain? As the clock ticks down to pivotal executive orders set to take effect in just a few days, the stakes grow higher. Will Panama's leadership withstand the heat of dual pressures from the U.S. and a powerful China? The outcome could redefine trade routes and international relations for decades to come. Can we predict how this saga will unfold? The answers remain intertwined with the fate of the Panama Canal, where every moment holds the potential for dramatic upheaval. What if the world's most critical shortcut suddenly turned into a battlefield for the globe's biggest powers? The Panama Canal today carries almost 40% of U.S. container traffic and about 6% of all maritime trade. Its 82-kilometer stretch shaves weeks off voyages that would otherwise round South America. Every ship that slips through saves time, fuel, and money. Yet the waterway now sits at the center of a fierce tug-of-war. The United States, led by a former Secretary of State, has warned Panama that any drift toward Chinese influence will trigger strong retaliation. Panama's president has rebuffed the claim, insisting the canal remains neutral and under Panamanian control. As diplomats trade barbs, a deeper question arises: will the canal stay a free conduit, or will it become a pawn in a new great power rivalry? Just days earlier, the United States slapped a sweeping 10% duty on Chinese imports, while adding modest tariffs on goods from Canada and Mexico, except for Canadian energy, which faced the same rate. Those measures took effect the moment Trump signed his executive orders, exempting goods en route to America. Experts warned the moves could tilt global economic balances, pointing to Beijing as the prime target of the administration's strategy. At the same time, Moscow lingered in the background, its alliance with China seen as a further threat. As Panama's leader, José Raúl Mulino, stands firm against external pressure, the question deepens: can the canal's sovereignty survive an onslaught of economic weapons and geopolitical intrigue, or will Washington's next move finally tip the scales? As tensions mount over the strategic Panama Canal, it stands at the crossroads of international power dynamics. The recent shift of Panama away from the Belt and Road Initiative hints at deeper motives, while the United States, under Donald Trump's leadership, seeks to reclaim influence. But can Panama maintain its sovereignty amidst the looming giants? The Panama Canal, a marvel of engineering, links the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, drastically cutting travel time for shipping. Imagine the thunderous roar of engines coupled with the scent of salt air as vessels glide through. For many nations, this passageway is vital, accounting for around 40% of U.S. container traffic and significantly impacting global trade. However, with Panama's refusal to allow free passage for U.S. ships, and escalated Chinese investments in the area, the stakes are rising. Marco Rubio recently toured the canal, discussing it with Panama's president, José Raúl Mulino. The discussions echoed with the urgency of historical claims. How did the once proud U.S. dominance over this crucial route diminish? As Rubio pushed for a return to established norms, Mulino remained resolute, dismissing any notion of foreign control. The canal is ours, he declared, rejecting claims of outside interference, particularly from China. But what does this mean for the future? Trump's administration argues that China's growing presence poses a national security risk, an assertion that has drawn lines in the sand. The U.S. retains the right to intervene under a decades-old treaty, although the likelihood of military action seems improbable. The tension is palpable, manifested in heated debates and cautious diplomatic exchanges. Will the U.S. turn to force, or will economic interests prevail? As these geopolitical games unfold, questions linger regarding the future of this critical waterway. Will Panama fortify its sovereignty against U.S. insistence for dominance? Or will it bend under pressure, creating an unnerving new chapter in global trade? The answer lies in the fragile balance of power, echoing through the waters of the canal. How will the actions taken today shape the global arena tomorrow? Only time will reveal the answer, but one thing is certain: the world is watching, and the stakes have never been higher. A daring question rattles the air: what if the world's most vital waterway, the Panama Canal, stops being a neutral passage and turns into the ultimate arena where great powers clash for supremacy? The very thought sends shivers down the spine, as ships groan against the lock-filled steel ribs and the salty spray whispers of hidden wars. The canal, a narrow 82-kilometer ribbon that moves roughly 6% of all maritime traffic, carries up to 40% of American container shipments. More than 13,000 vessels slide through each year, saving thousands of miles and days of sailing. The United States accounts for over half of the transits, 52% in 2024, while China hauls 21.4% of cargo, making it the second largest user. These numbers are etched into the global supply chain, a lifeline that nations like Australia feel in every surge of freight costs and every rise in consumer prices. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has just left Panama, where President José Raúl Mulino fended off a bold demand from the United States to grant free passage for American ships. The president, steadfast in defending Panama's sovereignty, rejected the claim that China controls the canal, even as Chinese firms own critical port facilities on both the Atlantic and Pacific entrances. The United States, invoking the 1977 treaties that promise permanent neutrality, threatens military action should that neutrality be compromised. Trump's administration, still echoing the former president's pledge, vows to wrest control back, branding Chinese involvement a national security threat. Mulino's refusal has ignited a fresh flashpoint. While the president balances the lure of economic opportunity with the need to guard independence, the United States eyes the void left by China's retreat from its Belt and Road Initiative. Will America step into that gap, or will Panama manage to keep the canal open to all, preserving its historic neutrality? The answer hangs in the humid night air over the lock chambers, where the echo of hammers and the scent of diesel fuel foretell a future that could reshape global trade or plunge it into a new era of rivalry.